Grace be unto you and peace from God our Father, through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. In our gospel lesson for today, there are two people that are totally bent out of shape. First person who was totally bent out of shape was a woman with a bad back. I hate to characterize this woman as totally bent out of shape. That seems like an unkind way to speak of a woman with a serious back problem. But Luke tells us that she was bent over and could in no way straighten herself up. Perhaps you've known people with this type of spinal condition. It's no fun. Can you imagine what a life that must have been? If you've ever had any kind of serious injury, you can surely empathize with this woman. About 30 years ago, I broke my leg in two places after what amounts to a 2-story free fall on a fire pole at a fire department. Long story, which I can share some other time. Bottom line, I was in casts of one sort or another for almost 6 months, and it hurt for a lot of that time. It was a long time ago, but I still remember it as a tough time. It's no fun to be in pain day and night, to use a crutch or a cane or a wheelchair, to be unable to participate in things other people were doing. I know there are people here today who know about pain. People with back problems, people with bad knees or hips, people with terrible illnesses. If you have experienced chronic pain, you can appreciate what this woman was experiencing. 18 years. This woman was bent over for 18 years. Can you imagine being in pain for 18 years? Can you remember what you were doing 18 years ago? That was 2001. Where were you in 2001? What were you doing? Can you imagine a pain from that time until now? Can you imagine walking around bent over at the waist for 18 years? I really hope none of you can. Being in pain is terrible. But pain was just part of this woman's problem. How could she take care of her daily chores? How could she get dressed in the morning? How could she take care of her children? How could she talk with people when she couldn't look them in the eye? How could she exercise? How could she keep her bad back from causing even more problems? It must have been a terrible thing to live like that. Always looking to the ground instead of the sky. Always being an object of pity. I don't know how this woman managed to get around, but I do know this. She didn't let her bad back keep her away from worship. She went to the synagogue to worship God on the Sabbath each and every week. She didn't go because she wanted to ask Jesus to help her. She went to the synagogue to worship God, and Jesus just happened to be there. She didn't ask anything of him. But he called her over and said, "Woman, you are free from your infirmity." And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she stood up and she began praising God. Well, at this point, we meet the second person in today's story who was totally bent out of shape. He was the leader of the synagogue, and he was offended. First, he was offended that Jesus called this woman to the front of the assembly, that he made her the center of attention, that he touched her. But above all, he was totally bent out of shape that Jesus healed this woman on the Sabbath. The Torah laid down a no work on the Sabbath rule, and everybody knew it. Why would this young prophet disregard such a simple, long-standing rule? Why couldn't he show a little respect for God and the Sabbath? I would have loved to have been there to see what happened next. This synagogue leader didn't take Jesus off to the side privately to counsel him. He didn't confront Jesus directly. Instead, he turned to the crowd and he said these things. He said, "There are 6 days in which men ought to work. Therefore, come on those days and be healed, people, not on the Sabbath day." I can just see that synagogue leader now, acting all superior with his nose in the air, quietly and firmly establishing that he was in charge. Yes, the young prophet had the power to heal, and that was good. But it would seem as though he didn't have the maturity to use his gift properly. He should have waited a few hours, thought the leader. He should have healed the woman after sunset, and then he wouldn't be in violation of the Torah. Then he would be honoring God and healing this woman. Notice that the synagogue leader doesn't deny that Jesus has the power to heal her. He's complaining about when he chose to heal her. So the synagogue leader didn't tell Jesus not to heal on the Sabbath. Instead, he told the crowd not to come for healing on the Sabbath. He knew he couldn't control Jesus, but he could control these people. They had to live with him day in and day out. He was the head man, the man in charge, and they all knew it. But Jesus wasn't about to give this guy the last word. The man had not criticized him directly, but Jesus answered him directly. He answered those and any others who might share his mindset. "You hypocrites," he said. "Doesn't each one of you free his ox or his donkey from the stall on the Sabbath and lead him away to water? Ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 long years, be freed from this bondage on Sabbath day?" Luke tells us that Jesus' opponents were put to shame. Then he says this. He says, all Jesus' adversaries were disappointed, and all the multitude rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by Jesus. Now, I'm sure that the crowd was rejoicing at the healing of the woman, their neighbor, this woman that they knew had suffered for so many years. They were delighted to see her made whole, thrilled, tears in their eyes. But I'm sure they were also rejoicing to see that synagogue leader put in his place. For years they had lived under his thumb. How good it must have felt to see his public humiliation, to see Jesus stop him in his tracks. So what does this story have to do with us? Just this. This story tells us that it is never against God's will for us to help people in need. Never. It tells us that there is never a bad time to do good things. It tells us that there's never a wrong time to make things right. It tells us that it's never unholy to do a holy thing. Elsewhere, Jesus tells us to love God and to love our neighbor. In this story, he shows us what it means to love our neighbor. It means helping where the help is needed, helping when the help is needed, and doing what is needed. Jesus helped this woman, and all the people rejoiced. Let's follow that example. Let's help where the help is needed, when the help is needed, and doing what is needed. We might not be able to solve all the world's problems, but we can help someone. And then we will be a blessing, and God will give us a blessing. Amen. The peace of God, which surpasses all human understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of our Savior Jesus Christ.